Alright, so this video is going to be all about Legion spells, and I guess really when to use them, when not to, and how to kind of figure out what to use. So the big thing to note is that there's really three types of Legion spells, right? There's offensive ones, there's defensive ones, and there's ones that really benefit your economy. The majority of the time, economy ones tend to be the most value if you don't have like a specified unit you want to use an offensive one on or a defensive one. But an example of offensive would be something like Pawn Shop. It gives every unit sale for 90%, also gives you some gold. If you really need to switch your build up from 10 because you went all in on a build of 10, they didn't send to you 10, and now you need to flip flop over, then Pawn Shop's a good one for you. Titan is going to give you your fighter a bunch of extra health. I consider that more or less a defensive spell, but it could be used as an offensive spell with something like healing abilities on a nightmare, right? More health, better healing potential, right? Pulverize is going to be a very offensive spell. It makes you attack faster and stun units. Best used on things that either attack really slowly that you want to attack faster, or something that already attacks very quickly, like Sky Caller, or Sky Queen, excuse me, a Zeus, something even like a Priestess can be decent on it. Things that attack quickly, stuns the units, can be pretty solid. Creditor is a risky offensive spell, and it's something to keep in mind that depending on like what your teammate's doing, when you got last sent, things like Creditor, things like Venture are things you really need to communicate, right? Offensive and defensive spells in terms of like abilities on your units, like Titan, Pulverizer, you don't really got to communicate a whole lot. If it's going to make you better, doesn't really matter what your teammate's doing, so long as you can then send with them again or save the amount that they need to leak their guy. But things like Creditor, where you have to save gold every wave, it really depends on when you last got sent. Because of the fact that you got to shift that 170 gold per wave to really get the value out of it. Guardian Angel, very defensive spell, but can be used for offensive units. The big thing to keep in mind with Guardian Angel, when a unit comes back to life, it should come back with full mana. So let's say you had a Grarl that is a King Claw, it dies, it comes back with a full mana, so it slams its fists right away and gets that stun out. Priestess of the Abyss, same thing. If it dies, it comes back with full mana, and it will spam out really quick. Guardian Angel works with Hydra, but what it does is it just respawns the big Hydra. It doesn't like have the little unit spawn and then another big Hydra pops. It's just the big Hydra comes out again. So it works, it's just not ideal for Hydra. Embargo is kind of a combo offensive and defensive spell, right? You can't hire any mercenaries, so it's a little bit risky in that sense, but you gain gold and mythium from Embargo. It can be good if you you got to send on like 10, or you sent on 10 and okay, I want to go 13, 14 at the earliest. Embargo is nice because it gives you a little bit of gold no matter what, and it allows you to shift later. It's actually quite a good spell, especially if you think you can get a kill on like 13 or 14. Lizard Army is more of a attack spell, right? You're sending lizards 1 on wave 11, 2 on 12, 3 on 13, and you're gaining some mythium. You're not getting income from those lizards, but the enemy is getting the 12 gold. Keep that in mind. But this is a really good spell if you see a build that's swift or something that's really exploitable on 12, or you think you can go for a kill shot 13. A couple extra lizards is always helpful, right? That's 120 mythium you wouldn't have had. All-out assault is literally the definition of go, 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 kill them now. You're getting less income, but you're getting 100 mythium. If you sent and saved from, let's say, like 6 to 11, and you've got Siege Ram, and you're like, I need just a little bit more. I want to make sure I really kill him here. All-out assault can be really strong because it just gives you that little extra mythium. Protector is best used on, I would say, a unit that you either need to keep alive, like a Nightmare Butcher, right? The Nightmare having extra health, super solid. Otherwise, things when like you have gates, or any unit that spawns like with a lesser HP, so like a wild shroom, Protector is really strong. But primarily Protector is utilized with gates and Lord of Death. Anything that spawns units, because those units decay over time, the Protector keeps them alive. As well as not allowing your gates to die, because whenever they pop, it's solid. Vampire is a really good defensive spell. Really good defensive spell because it gives that lifesteal bump, right? Let's say you had a roll with, I don't know, Holy Avenger, Nightmare, something that needs healing usually. It gives you an outlet to gain that healing. It's good on a wide variety of units, and it can affect up to 6 units at the same time. It does stack with Butcher and Head Chef, so you can technically get a 3-stack healing unit. Very strong on certain units, but overall a relatively good unit relatively good spell. To go back here, Hutter Butter asks if Protector is on ranged unit is better than melee. Majority of the time, Protector is best on a ranged unit, because once the Protector unit dies, all units stop gaining health. So if your Protector unit's in the back line, all of your frontline units will continuously gain health the entire time throughout the fight. Otherwise, if you have it on a frontline unit and that unit dies, you lose Protector, which can be the difference between holding waves and leaking if you lose that Protector unit early. Magician, one of my favorites. So Magician is best used on something like Starcaller with, let's say, Steeds. The idea is that it gives you buffed mana regeneration on the unit you place it on, as well as the surrounding 6 units. The biggest thing with Magician is that it's super good on units that need mana regeneration for an extended period of time. So LOD, Steeds, Disciples, Gates, all super good options, right? Anything that gets mana over time, super good for it. Something even like Holy Avenger is pretty solid too. Sorcerer, on the other hand, is a single unit, not an aura, single unit. So different than Magician and Vampire. Single unit, used to be aura, now single. Best utilized on units that have high ability damage. So, let's say a bunk with healing. So let's say you had a bunk with a Butcher or something, right, to give it healing. Sorcerer on a bunk is actually pretty solid. It deals a lot more dispersed damage throughout the wave. You guys have all seen me now in my games where I do Disciple with Sorcerer. Disciple Sorcerer is pretty solid once you get it up to a Starcaller. And then if you combine that with, let's say, like Steeds, you create a cannon. And that cannon, it can basically just pump out a ton of damage with Disciple Starcaller. Disciple into Starcaller with Steeds. Venture, much like Creditor, is a spell that you need to communicate with your teammate on. If you jump into a Venture and your teammate leaks hard on 12 or 11, you are looking very rough. Because Venture takes away that 105 gold you need. You might not hold then 11 or 12, and those are really common waves to send on when there's Venture in the game. People plan around this. It's super strong if you can hold 11 and 12. Super good though if you can hold it. Dark Ritual is kind of a offensive spell with a negative in terms of your king health, right? If you take Dark Ritual, you get 130 gold, which is solid. Dark Ritual is super solid, but unlike Venture, where you want to take it when your enemy has sent you on like 9, 10, Dark Ritual is best on situations where the enemy is going to send you on like 11 or 12. Or they're long saving you for 13, whatever. You need Dark Ritual, though, for those situations where you are probably going to die from your send. It's also really solid when you already have low health, right? If your king is down to like 20% health, 20% of 20 isn't anything, right? That's like nothing. I'm already dead if I leak, so who cares? That's another spot where Dark Ritual can be really solid. Overwork is really good if you're sending on 11 and you have a lot of workers. Otherwise, it really doesn't matter. If you want to take it, you can, but the usefulness of the overwork is if you have a large amount of workers and you're going to send on 11. Otherwise, it really isn't that great. You want 11 to be really long. You do not want 12 to be long. That's kind of how I looked at it. That's how I look at overwork. Hero is another kind of defensive spell. Best utilized on either tanks or damage dealers you want to deal more damage. Hero on Nightmare Butcher, for instance, with the front line is really solid. Villain, best used on single target damage units such as Zeus, Sky Queen, or something that just attacks fast in general. You want it to be able to attack a large variety of things to give it villain buff. Starcaller Steed with villain buff is actually decent. Giant Snail is something that I would say is kind of situational. You don't want to use Giant Snail on anything that has area effect, big splash damage with something like a Millennium, or boars. Like anything that's going to just run in there and murder your send right away, you're not going to want to get Giant Snail. Giant Snail is pretty solid if someone's like, say, Zeus, Harpy, Sky Queen, things like that. It's just the issue is that eventually giant snails are kind of so a question from chat: does villain work with AoE like water elemental? Technically, yes. Villain works with AoE like water elemental, but not like you think. Villain only works on the first unit that's damaged by anything that has area effect. So for like Aqua, the first unit that it hits with its splash, it only hits the first unit, and that's the only unit that's villained. Mask only hits one of the 3 units. Same thing with Elite Archer, etc. Villain is also now a very good build on something like Radiant Halo because it has that, again, that damage ramp over time, so it's really good for boss waves, 20, or just any waves that have units that you need to kill. I mean, it's just a solid unit overall. Lone is kind of in a weird spot right now. Lone is in a weird spot right now. Because the negative 36 income for the 200 gold, you really, really, really need to know you're getting a send on 11. It's just not always the greatest option, right? That negative 36 income can really damage your scalability throughout the late game. You know, my chat is saying though, yes, a villain is very good on things that are single target damage with the high attack speed, like Nightmare as well. Nightmare Butcher is super solid. Ever worth it to take Lone and make 4 workers for aggressive sends? I would say no. Majority of the time you're probably going to hurt your own scaling, but I guess it's possible. It is possible. Like, I've done it before. It depends really on what spells are available, right? You only get 3 spells. So if the spells are bad, sure, Lone to aggressively push 4 might work, but you're losing out on 36 income, so you really need to make that 120 Mythium back in like one wave. Otherwise, it's really going to hurt you in the long run. Sacrifice is really good for if you have a unit like Oathbreaker on the split, you don't want to be there anymore. A thing like Zerker that you needed on 10, but you don't want to use anymore. At least until later in the game, you don't need its help for 11, 12. So Sacrifice basically gives you the ability to sacrifice any fighter, get the full value back, and then also gain 90 gold. You can get the 90 gold, I believe, and then sacrifice later. So sacrifice is also good if you want to like kind of save it and to try to like plan their send, and then if they don't send, it can be kind of nice to have like, okay, let's say I built a bunk on 11 and 12 and they didn't send 11 or 12. I can sack the bunk now and build something for 13 or 14, or, you know, that cycle right there is kind of nice. Savior basically just gives your king health again, so it's kind of like a last resort in my opinion. The 90 gold is nice. It's the same as taxation, so if your king really needs the health because you're getting a send here, it can be okay. Allowance is, I think, honestly a better loan. You get the 100 gold. You don't have any negatives. It's just positive. So if you had like allowance and loan, I'd take allowance like 90% of the time. All right, well, that's a good time for that to happen. I think I had like 2 left. Well, boys and girls, this video just got interesting. Because I just had the game relog me because I've been sitting for too long, I think. But yeah, so allowance is a really good most of the time.
Welcome to Nova.
Press the attack is a pretty good one. Similar to like allowance is a poor man's loan. Press the attack is a poor man's all-out assault. That 30 Mythium may make a difference, sure, but you keep your income, and in both those situations, keeping your income can be better. So I'd say allowance over loan, press the attack over all-out assault. Investment is just a super solid thing to take if you want late game scaling. Super solid if you want to do late game scaling. But outside of that, yeah, I guess this is kind of it. If you ever want to come in and do this, it's just dash power up, and you can get any power up in the game, and it allows you to select it. I think you can even select multiple. Yeah, so if you wanted to like test and see, okay, is vampire on this unit better, or is sorcerer on this unit better, or whatever, you can always come in here and you can always test them all out. You can mega power 1 unit for fun, as my chat is telling me. Mega powering one unit for fun is a great way to like mess around with Sandbox, but you're learning, right? The whole idea of Sandbox is to continue to grow and learn, build strategies, synergies, etc. So I hope these power up explanations kind of help. It's very basic, so if you've played a handful of games, you know, you might not need all of this. But yeah, for the most part, hope this power up video is helpful.